desire to see more change and to highlight wonderful people doing incredible things, as we've all seen today.
Prince William tried to stay strong, but when Princess Anne spoke the king's last wish, he started crying. The crown was no longer just his job, it now rested on Catherine, even as she fought cancer. Tune in as Prince William's tears reveal a choice that could break the crown forever. A wish, a crown, and tears. Prince William had spent a lifetime preparing for duty, wearing the invisible armor of tradition and expectation. Yet nothing could shield him from the weight of this moment. The king's last wish was not just a symbolic gesture. It was a direct call to the future, stitched with emotion and sharpened by the unrelenting passage of time. Princess Anne, steady and unshaken, spoke the words that cracked William's composure. But the truth she revealed would tear through the legacy he was born to protect. In that quiet room lined with portraits of ancestors whose lives were etched into history books, a ripple moved through the gathered family. Anne's voice, calm but charged, carried a weight that no title or crown could diminish. The late king's final wish was not only about the throne, but about who would carry the soul of the monarchy forward. His gaze had turned toward Catherine, the woman who had once been a shy university student, now standing as a pillar of grace, strength, and quiet revolution. Catherine's journey had not been a fairy tale paved in gold. Born into an ordinary, hard-working family in Berkshire, England, she learned early the value of perseverance and humility. Michael and Carol Middleton had carved out a life built not on aristocratic privilege, but on determination and dreams stitched together with sacrifice. They enrolled Catherine in respected schools, laying a foundation they hoped would grant her a life filled with opportunities. It was at Marlborough College where Catherine's resilience first truly shined. She excelled academically, balancing the demands of rigorous study with the quiet grace that would later define her. But destiny was still many steps ahead, waiting quietly in the stone corridors of St. Andrews University in Scotland. At St. Andrews, among ancient towers and cobbled streets, Catherine crossed paths with the young prince whose future would intertwine with hers. Friendship came first, shared classes, mutual support, days spent in the safety of youthful anonymity. In those simple beginnings, a bond began to grow, one that would endure scrutiny, pressure, and history itself. While William struggled with the weight of his destiny, it was Catherine who offered him an anchor. She encouraged him to stay the course when his path seemed blurred, helping him weather storms without ever demanding the spotlight. Their relationship was not a tale of royal fantasy, but one of real, rooted connection, a partnership forged through shared struggle and silent loyalty. As their bond deepened, they guarded their connection fiercely, shielding it from the sharp claws of public curiosity. William, all too familiar with the brutality of media attention, sought to protect the woman who had become his safe harbor. Their love story, though whispered about in corners of tabloids, remained theirs until the moment they chose to share it with the world. In November of 2010, during a trip to Kenya, Prince William asked Catherine to become his wife. He offered her a sapphire engagement ring that once graced the hand of his late mother, a silent promise that their love would carry the memory of Diana forward. The announcement of their engagement captivated hearts across the globe, painting a picture of hope for a monarchy yearning for new life. 6 months later, Catherine walked down the aisle at Westminster Abbey, a vision of timeless elegance and quiet strength. The world watched as two lives became one, bound not just by duty, but by devotion. Catherine, now a duchess, stepped into her royal role with a poise that belied her years. From the very beginning, Catherine understood the delicate dance between tradition and progress. She respected the centuries-old customs she now represented. Yet she brought a fresh, relatable warmth that connected her with ordinary people. She did not wear her new title like a shield. She wore it like a second skin, graceful, natural, unwavering. Her approach to her role was never performative. She did not merely attend ceremonies, she lived them with sincerity. She worked quietly and diligently behind the scenes, advocating for mental health awareness, children's well-being, and early childhood development. Her initiatives were not mere royal obligations, they were passions rooted in genuine care. As the years passed, Catherine became more than just William's wife. She became a cornerstone of the royal family, a steady presence through storms both public and private. Her influence grew quietly but unmistakably. She understood that the monarchy's survival in a changing world required evolution, not erosion. She embodied the balance between honoring the past and embracing the future. And now, standing in the echo of King Charles's last wish, her journey had reached a new pinnacle. The monarch's faith in her was not a casual endorsement. It was a recognition of her life's work, her spirit, and her undeniable importance to the future of the crown. The silence in the room after Anne's words stretched long and thick, the kind of silence that demanded reflection. William's eyes, heavy with unshed tears, met Catherine's across the room. Without a word spoken, 1,000 promises were exchanged. Not just of love, not just of duty, but of carrying a legacy forward, with humility, with resilience, and with a deep understanding of the burden and blessing it represented. The monarchy was not about crowns and ceremonies alone. It was about people, about trust, about the invisible threads that tied history to the present and the future. In that moment, Catherine became not just a duchess or a princess. She became the bridge between what the monarchy had been, what it was now, and what it might become. And outside the old stone walls of the palace, beyond the flash of cameras and the frenzy of headlines, the people were already beginning to understand. Catherine was no longer just the future queen. She was the living heart of the monarchy's tomorrow. A legacy built on quiet strength. The quiet strength that Catherine carried was never louder than in her most challenging moments. When she faced her private battle with cancer, the world did not see a crumbling figure begging for sympathy. Instead, they saw a woman who stood tall, even when the weight on her shoulders grew too heavy for most to imagine. On a brisk March afternoon in the year 2024, the Princess of Wales appeared on a simple bench within the gardens of Windsor. She was alone, framed by bare branches and the softened light of a somber sky. There were no regal backdrops, no grand declarations. Only Catherine, a woman confronting one of life's cruelest battles, speaking to the world with calm honesty. Her message, carefully spoken, revealed what many had feared but few had dared to say aloud. Cancer had entered her life, not with fanfare, but with the same quiet, ruthless force it brings to so many. Her words, measured and soothing, carried the rawness of truth. She asked for understanding, for space, for prayers, and the world responded. Across the United Kingdom and far beyond, an outpouring of love rushed toward her. People who had never met her wept openly. Crowds gathered at palace gates to leave flowers, cards, and handwritten notes filled with hope and encouragement. Her vulnerability, far from diminishing her image, made her shine even brighter. Catherine showed that true courage was not in pretending strength, but in living it. Even as the treatments began, silent battles fought behind closed doors. Catherine did not retreat from her public role. She appeared when she could, always composed, always steady, refusing to let her illness define her. To the people watching, she became a symbol of resilience, a reflection of all those who had faced silent struggles of their own and continued forward without fanfare. Within the walls of the royal family, Catherine's quiet fight brought them closer together. Prince William, once again finding his strength in her presence, became her steadfast protector. Their bond, already tempered by years of public and private storms, grew deeper with each passing day. Together, they presented an image of unity and unwavering devotion to duty, even as their personal world was rocked by uncertainty. Catherine's cancer diagnosis marked a turning point not just for her, but for the monarchy itself. It reminded everyone, both inside and outside the palace, that royalty is not immune to human pain. beneath the crowns and the titles beat hearts vulnerable to the same tragedies that touched ordinary lives. In Catherine, the people saw not just a princess, but a mother, a wife, a woman walking a path of suffering with dignity and strength. Her bravery renewed the public's faith in the institution she represented. Where once there was cynicism about the relevance of the monarchy in modern times, Catherine's vulnerability breathed fresh life into the crown's meaning. It was not about grandeur. It was about service, about humanity, about enduring. Meanwhile, Catherine's influence extended quietly but powerfully beyond personal battles. In her role as Princess of Wales, she continued to champion causes close to her heart. Her early childhood initiatives pressed on, her mental health campaigns expanded, and her dedication to children's welfare deepened. She understood that legacy is not built in moments of triumph alone, but also in how one endures and uplifts others during hardship. Behind closed doors, there was another critical transformation underway. Catherine's quiet leadership began to ripple through the family itself. Senior royals looked to her for guidance, for a model of how to navigate public life with grace and purpose. Even as the monarchy faced internal fractures and external scrutiny, her presence provided an unspoken assurance that stability could endure. For Prince William, this was more than comforting. It was galvanizing. King Charles's final wish, now echoing louder in his mind, placed Catherine at the very center of the royal family's future. She was not simply by his side, she was becoming the backbone of a new era. The Queen's earlier private remarks about Catherine's future role now carried prophetic weight. Elizabeth II had seen what few others had fully understood at the time, that Catherine's humility, her perseverance, her quiet ability to inspire trust would one day be the monarchy's most valuable treasures. As weeks turned into months, the public's affection for Catherine only deepened. She was no longer seen merely as the future queen consort. She was something rarer, a trusted figure whose life story mirrored that of the very people the monarchy sought to serve. She had faced struggles, embraced motherhood, fought personal battles, and still emerged standing strong with her head held high. Across Britain, discussions about the future of the crown grew louder. Analysts, historians, and ordinary citizens alike found themselves agreeing more and more on one thing. Catherine's role was no longer supportive. It was central. Her partnership with William was not just a love story. It was the monarchy's bridge into a complicated, changing world. Inside the palace, preparations shifted subtly but significantly. Catherine's input was sought more frequently on important matters. Her ideas about modernization, community engagement, and charitable focus began to influence broader royal strategies. She was not demanding a seat at the table. She had earned it quietly, through years of steadfast dedication. The vision for the future monarchy became clearer. It would be built not merely on titles and traditions, but on people like Catherine, rooted, relatable, resilient. She was and is proof that strength does not always roar. Sometimes it speaks in whispers, in moments of quiet courage, in the small, unwavering steps taken even when the path is difficult. Through it all, Catherine never once sought credit or praise. She simply continued walking her path, her focus fixed on service, her heart open to those she represented. And in doing so, she became not just a symbol of hope, but a living, breathing embodiment of the monarchy's best future. The echoes of King Charles's last wish now seemed less like a request and more like a prophecy unfolding before everyone's eyes. The crown's future was not only secure, it was shining in the steady hands of a woman who never needed a throne to command loyalty, only a heart, a mind, and a spirit committed to something greater than herself. And soon the world would see just how much Catherine was ready to lead. Threads of duty and a new royal order. While the outside world buzzed with speculation, admiration, and hope, within the ancient walls of the royal palaces, something even more profound was unfolding. The monarchy, shaped over centuries by towering figures and fragile moments, was beginning to adjust its course, not with thunderous proclamations, but with the silent weaving of new threads. At the heart of this transformation stood Catherine, her strength no longer an open question, but an unshakable truth. King Charles's final wish had planted a seed of change, but it was Catherine's steady hands that began to nurture it into reality. There was a growing understanding, shared quietly among those who mattered most, that Catherine's role would extend beyond that of a supportive queen consort. She was emerging as a stabilizer, a guiding presence, a source of calm direction in an era desperate for it. Princess Anne, the quiet architect of tradition and duty, recognized this better than anyone. She had spent decades defining what royal service meant, through sweat, perseverance, and a steadfast refusal to chase the spotlight. In Catherine, Anne saw a reflection of her own values, sharpened by the demands of a faster, louder world. Their bond was not one of sentimental public displays, but of deeply shared purpose. They understood the heavy mantle of service not as a burden, but as a solemn privilege. Anne's steady work-first ethic had long been a template for the family's survival. Now, it was being passed down, not through speeches or declarations, but through quiet example, patient guidance, and mutual respect. Catherine absorbed those lessons with humility. She understood the unspoken rule: true service is measured not by headlines, but by history. The two women moved in sync, side by side, at charity events, hospital visits, and memorial ceremonies. There was an unforced rhythm to their interactions, a silent dance built on the recognition that the monarchy's future would not survive on charisma alone. It would survive on commitment, on endurance, on the kind of quiet work that often went unnoticed but never went unfelt. As Catherine's public role grew, so too did her private influence within the royal household. She became a bridge, not just between past and present, but between different factions of a family, often fractured by grief, ambition, and misunderstanding. It was Catherine who gently encouraged unity, who soothed tensions, who offered practical solutions without ever raising her voice. She understood instinctively what others took years to learn, that leadership within the royal family was as much about healing as it was about guiding. At official events, Catherine carried herself with the same grace that had first captured the world's heart. But it was in the smaller, unseen moments where her true power was felt. The reassuring glance to a nervous aide, the comforting word to a grieving family member, the willingness to listen fully and without judgment when others only pretended to. These small acts wove an invisible tapestry of loyalty around her, among palace staff, among senior advisors, and most importantly, among the people themselves. In Catherine, they found someone who did not simply represent the monarchy. She embodied its best aspirations. Meanwhile, Prince William, ever the future king, drew quiet strength from his wife's unyielding presence. His public demeanor, once marked by flashes of uncertainty, now carried the weight and calm of a man standing shoulder to shoulder with a woman who understood the path ahead as deeply as he did. Together, they formed an image of modern royalty rooted not in outdated privilege, but in accessible humanity. Their partnership was not a show for the cameras. It was a working, breathing example of shared purpose, resilience, and love. Inside the palace, plans began to shift accordingly. Advisors who once focused solely on William now included Catherine in discussions about long-term strategy. Her insights, shaped by years of listening and learning, carried weight. Her vision for a modern monarchy, one that honored tradition while welcoming change, began to find fertile ground. Charitable foundations received new energy. Public appearances took on a renewed sense of sincerity and connection. Behind the scenes, new initiatives quietly formed, focused on mental health, early childhood development, and community outreach. Catherine's fingerprints, always subtle, were now visible in every corner of the monarchy's evolving landscape. And beyond the palace gates, the British public watched. They saw the mother walking her children to school in the morning, balancing tiaras and toddlers with the same effortless grace. They saw the princess kneeling in gardens, laughing with children, comforting veterans, honoring nurses. They saw someone who, in every gesture, large and small, reaffirmed the monarchy's place in their hearts. Through it all, Catherine remained unchanged at her core. She did not seek adulation or command attention. Her power came not from self-promotion, but from authenticity. She was not building an empire of influence. She was building a foundation of trust. The monarchy's evolution under her quiet stewardship was not a revolution of spectacle. It was a revolution of spirit, a slow, careful, deeply human reshaping of what it meant to serve. The lessons of Princess Anne, the hopes of King Charles, and the dreams of Queen Elizabeth II all found a living echo in Catherine's journey. She was not the loudest voice in the room, nor the most visible figure in the headlines. She was something far more valuable. She was the steady heart beating beneath the crown. And with each passing day, it became more and more clear. The future of the monarchy did not rest solely on bloodlines or tradition. It rested on people like Catherine, people who understood that real power lies in service, in resilience, and in the quiet determination to leave things better than they found them. The world was changing. The royal family was changing. And at the center of it all, guiding the way with silent strength and unwavering grace, stood the Princess of Wales. The threads of duty were changing, and Catherine made them stronger. The new era rises. As the seasons turned and the leaves shifted from green to gold across the gardens of Windsor, the monarchy quietly stepped into a new chapter. It did not arrive with the clash of trumpets or the glare of grand declarations. It came on steady feet, carried by a woman whose quiet strength had become the monarchy's most precious inheritance. Catherine, Princess of Wales, was no longer simply a promising figure of the future. She was the present. She was the anchor. She was the proof that even the oldest institutions could find renewal through the soft power of authenticity, patience, and purpose. Her work deepened with each passing month. The Center for Early Childhood, once just an idea whispered behind palace doors, grew into a force of change. Schools across the nation incorporated new programs shaped by her advocacy. Parents, teachers, and community leaders echoed her message that the roots of a strong society began not in grand gestures, but in the smallest, earliest moments of a child's life. Mental health initiatives, once considered bold, were now seen as essential thanks to Catherine's unwavering commitment. The public no longer whispered about depression and anxiety in shame. They spoke openly, encouraged by a princess who had dared to show that vulnerability and strength were not opposites, but companions. Beyond the programs and campaigns, Catherine's impact showed itself in more subtle ways. At royal engagements, crowds cheered not just out of habit, but out of genuine affection. Letters poured into Buckingham Palace, not requesting favors, but simply thanking her for being real, for being human, for being someone they could see a piece of themselves in. Internationally, Catherine's reputation soared. World leaders, once cautious about engaging with royals, found in her a figure of sincerity and intelligence. She navigated diplomatic events, not with cold formality, but with a warmth that disarmed even the most skeptical dignitaries. In quieter moments, behind closed palace doors, Catherine became the royal family's quiet strategist. Her advice, sought in private meetings, helped steer decisions about public perception, modernization, and outreach. She brought the world inside the palace closer to the world outside its gates, building bridges where walls had once stood. Within her own family, Catherine continued to be the heartbeat. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis thrived under her care, growing up with a sense of balance between their royal destiny and the simple joys of childhood. Walks through the countryside, baking sessions in the palace kitchens, laughter at bedtime, all small moments that wove a life filled with normalcy amid extraordinary circumstances. She and Prince William remained a team, not just in appearances, but in purpose. They were two halves of a vision for a monarchy that could endure not by clinging to the past, but by honoring it while reaching bravely toward the future. The legacy of Queen Elizabeth II echoed strongly through it all. Her final private recognition of Catherine's potential was not a passing thought. It was a calculated, hopeful bet on the future. And it was paying off. Princess Anne's support only solidified it further. Her quiet mentorship, her unsentimental respect, her example of duty above all else, these became the invisible armor Catherine wore into every engagement, every meeting, every moment when the weight of history pressed down. As Catherine's influence grew, the press, once relentless in its pursuit of scandal, found itself shifting. Stories about her became not tales of intrigue, but tributes to her work, her impact, her ability to weather storms without losing herself. She was not a figurehead frozen in time. She was a living embodiment of what the monarchy could become, dignified without being distant, modern without being reckless, compassionate without being weak. Inside the royal family, a quiet realignment took shape. Catherine, without asking, without demanding, became one of its central pillars. Not because of her title, not because of her marriage, but because of her character. And as the inevitable transitions approached, with a future king and queen preparing for roles that would shape the destiny of a nation, there was a sense of calm readiness. The people were no longer anxious about what the future would hold. They looked at Catherine and saw a reflection of their hopes. A leader who listened, who learned, who led not by command, but by example. The monarchy's survival had always depended on its ability to adapt, but adaptation required more than strategy. It required trust. It required a heart. Catherine carried both effortlessly, like the crown itself was stitched into her very soul. The great institutions of the world often fall not because of external pressures, but because they lose touch with the people they serve. Catherine ensured that the monarchy would not make that mistake. She brought the crown closer to the ground, closer to the people, without ever dimming its luster. Every ribbon cut at a hospital, every hand held in a care home, every child was comforted at a charity event. Each moment built not just goodwill, but trust, the most precious currency the crown could ever possess. And as she stood beside Prince William at state banquets, at memorials, at gatherings meant to honor history and shape the future, she did so with a grace that spoke volumes. She did not need a throne to prove her worth. She had already built her kingdom, in hearts, in hopes, in the quiet spaces where trust is born. As new generations looked for inspiration, they found it in her example. Young women especially saw in Catherine a model not of unattainable perfection, but of strength grounded in reality. A woman who understood duty, but also embraced change. Someone who walked through storms and still chose kindness. Even within palace walls, among those who served the crown for decades, the respect for her grew organically. Courtiers who once measured success in formal protocols began to measure it in moments of real human connection, a standard Catherine had set simply by being herself. Diplomatic circles, once distant from royal affairs, began to see engagements with the monarchy not as mere obligations, but as opportunities to forge genuine ties. Catherine's influence rippled outward, drawing the world into a new relationship with an institution long regarded as remote. Through every trial, every challenge, Catherine's presence remained steady. When controversies flared elsewhere, when headlines screamed of discord, she moved forward with quiet resolve. Never overreaching, never withdrawing. Simply enduring, shaping the future with each carefully chosen step. It was in the moments unseen by cameras where her leadership shone brightest. Meetings with community leaders to understand local struggles. Private conversations with charity founders working against impossible odds. Quiet visits to hospital wards long after the news crews had gone home. In all of it, there was no grandstanding. There was no hunger for praise, only a deep, unshakable understanding that leadership, real leadership, was a service paid in quiet acts of devotion. As the seasons continued, their ancient dance around Windsor and the gardens turned from gold to the bare elegance of winter, a new chapter continued to unfold, written not in headlines, but in lives touched and changed. Catherine, Princess of Wales, had risen not by force, not by command, but by the oldest and purest power there is, the power of example. And through that example, a new era was not just rising. It had already begun. What if the true strength of the future monarchy was never meant to be found in crowns or ceremonies, but in the quiet heart of someone like Catherine? Leave your thoughts in the comments, like, and subscribe for more.